Today's podcast is sponsored by the Association of Mature American Citizens, the only conservative alternative to that other group. Go to amac.us/Carter. Today, I am joined by Kash Patel. He is an attorney, the former chief of staff of the acting Secretary of State under President Trump, and author of the newly released children's book, The Plot Against the King. He is my friend, too. It's already an Amazon bestseller. The Plot Against the King is a fantastical retelling of Hillary Clinton's horrible plot against Donald Trump, complete with fake heralds, a shifty knight, and of course, a wise wizard, Kash, the discoverer, right? I'll also bring you up to speed on what the elites are planning to do to restrict your freedoms. I know you've all been talking about it too, probably out there. If you've been watching Davos, they were talking about everything openly there just last week. But we're going to tell you what they were talking about as they were trying to manipulate the world. Please follow and subscribe. Get all the links at saracarter.com. That's saracarter.com. And while you're there, sign up for our email list so that you do not get shadow banned. Before I get to Kash Patel, I want you to imagine a scenario in 2024 where Vice President Kamala Harris, or as the Spanish here call her, Kamala Harris, is being urged to determine which electoral votes count and why. Because the Electoral Count Act isn't specific enough, guys. The Presidential Election Project wants to see this change. Visit www.presidentialelectionproject.com to learn why reform of the Electoral Count Act is so important. The Presidential Election Project believes Congress should clearly define the role of the vice president in counting electoral votes and make clear the position is ceremonial and is not tasked with determining the outcome of any election. Go to www.presidentialelectionproject.com now and learn more. Take the first step in ensuring Kamala Harris can't unilaterally decide the 2024 presidential election. That's www.presidentialelectionproject.com. Before I get to Kash Patel, I think it's important that we talk about what's been going on in the world. So the people around the world who think they're better than you, they do. They're the elites. They're the people in charge of some of the biggest tech companies in the world, news organizations that run the news organizations, such as, Jeff Bezos, who owns now the Washington Post, and, the New York Times, and all of the people you haven't even heard of, in charge of, people that are involved in OPEC and people that go to parties that we would never be invited to. Right? Maybe unless I was actually waiting on them. That's when I would be invited to their parties. They have gathered at the World Economic Forum in Davos, and they are so excited about limiting your freedom. Let's start with Julie Inman Grant. She is an Australian commissioner of e-safety because she wants you all to be safe. That's all she cares. She cares so much about you. And she has decided that the best way to deal with the political polarization we're seeing is to basically recalibrate what freedom of speech actually means. Listen to this.
We are finding ourselves in a place where we have increasing polarization everywhere, and everything feels binary when it doesn't need to be. So I think we're going to have to think about a recalibration of a whole range of human rights that are playing out online, from freedom of speech to the freedom to, to be free from online violence, or the right of data protection to the right to child dignity.
I think Julie, she just wants the best for you. She just wants to recalibrate freedom. I mean, what do they think? Do they think we're idiots? They must think we're idiots. But, Julie wants to do the best, and she's not the only one. This isn't an official from China or North Korea. It's Australia, folks. It's Australia. I want you to think about, just remember what was happening in Australia under COVID. Look at what was happening in the United States. For crying out loud, look at what was happening in Canada when I was there under Prime Minister Trudeau, right? Remember, we just had Gad Saad on the show, the professor who wrote this amazing book called The Parasitic Mind, right? So he was talking about this. He was talking about just this. And he lives in Canada. Look at what's happening to the West. Look at how the infiltration of Marxist ideology has taken over our nations in such a subtle way. Guys, I keep talking about the Trojan horse. This is what I'm talking about. We don't even realize it's here. So if it's being talked about in Australia, if it's being talked about in Canada, if it's being talked about in other Western nations, and by the way, it's being talked about here in the United States, we better be ready for it, because that is what the disinformation movement is all about. Guys, how do we fight back? That's what we've been talking about on this show. And that's what you and I both need to be thinking about all the time. How do we fight back? How do we protect this precious nation and our Constitution and those fundamental freedoms that make us the greatest place on earth? I mean, I am really, really scared of where all of this is heading, and you should be too. But wait, Julie is not to be outdone. The Alibaba Group president, Alibaba China, right? President J. Michael Evans says his company is working on a new product that is supposedly for your benefit. It's a carbon footprint tracker. Check this out.
We're developing, through technology, an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean? That's where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So, individual carbon footprint tracker. Stay tuned. We don't have it operational yet, but this is something that we're working on.
Wow, I can't wait for the carbon footprint tracker. So that way, Kash Patel and I and everybody else will be able to be safe with the government watching over us, watching over what we eat, watching out for what we buy, knowing every little thing about us, right? Because we need those babysitters. What is going on here? Guys, do not give up everything. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater for technology. There is a way to balance everything out. Come on. Who do you really think is going to use the device that tracks everything you buy, how far you travel, and how you travel? Think about that. It's not the individual. It's a government that wants to dictate every aspect of your life over their green agenda, which is really totally out of control. And by the way, I keep getting messages from the CDC begging me, like when I went to Virginia, begging me to allow them to access my phone so that they could let me know if I was in the vicinity of anybody with COVID or if I had COVID. I was just like, screw you. I'm not, no, whatever. No, you cannot have that information, although I believe they already do. Look, I've got Kash Patel in the wings. He is waiting to get on the show, but I want to talk to you really quick about AMAC. Now is a critical time to be vigilant in the defense of our freedom. You guys know how much I love this organization. It sponsors the Sara Carter Show, but not only does it do that, it fights for you, and that's why I have them here, and that's why they're a part of my show. There's no better way to do so than by what? By joining the Association of Mature American Citizens. By joining AMAC, you are literally taking the first steps to saving the America that you love. AMAC offers an alternative to just about every benefit that other group offers, but without the liberal agenda. I stand with AMAC, and I hope that you will too. I encourage you to join today at amac.us/Carter. Use that /Carter at amac.us/Carter. That's amac.us/Carter. The benefits of membership are great, but the cause is even greater. Join today at amac.us/Carter. Without any further delay, I got Kash Patel here. Like I said, he is an attorney, the former chief of staff to the acting secretary of state under President Trump, and he is the author of an awesome, newly released children's book, The Plot Against the King. Kash, congratulations on the book. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. I'm so happy I got you today.
Sarah, thanks so much for having me. A disclaimer, Sarah and I are close friends, so we are going to do a very biased show. It will be full of disinformation.
Yeah, it's going to be so biased because I just love Kash. I know I love you, Kash. I love you. I think you're awesome. I think what you not only no, it's
kind.
true. You guys, not only is he an awesome person just in general, he is like a true American patriot. And Kash, without you back behind the scenes, I mean, nobody even knew who you were. I mean, I did. a few of us, a few of us knew you were working your magic behind the scenes. I mean, this man barely slept as he was investigating under Devin Nunes when he was head of the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, and working every day and night to ensure that our nation was protected, to ensure that he would find out what happened to President Trump, what the FBI was doing, what the DOJ was up to, and those are all the cohorts that were under, President Obama in the past, and the people in the establishment that were working against President Trump. So I'm going to before we get into your book, I kind of want you to, Kash, to tell everyone who's listening to this a little bit about what happened, how you became involved in the House Intelligence Committee with, Devin, and I guess maybe what started you off on that investigation.
No, I appreciate those kind of words. And look, without you reporting on it, none of it would have mattered. You were like one of the only people that would have cared to listen back then, and continuously throughout the 5 years. I mean, you just crush it on TV, and that's the whole point of accountability. If the American people can't be told what actually happened, then who cares about the work? So I got lucky, met Devin by chance, and I was a former federal prosecutor, a terrorism prosecutor, and an intel guy, a civilian in the military, doing stuff at JSOC, and had done FISA work at the Department of Justice. And Devin said, "We got this investigation. You want to come over?" I, of course, said, "No, that sounds like a terrible idea." And then a month later, I was over there running the Russiagate investigation. And none of us saw it would go the way it went, of course, because even I was like, well, yeah, you can lie to a federal court, one person, but you can't really have an entire political party hijack the seventh floor of the FBI and the DOJ and then lie to a federal court and get a FISA warrant on a president and his campaign. Like, that stuff is just unbelievable. And then we followed the money, and we showed that Christopher Steele was paid by Hillary Clinton and Fusion GPS and Perkins Coie, who's basically on trial like this week in the Sussman trial with John Durham's prosecutions in the special counsel case. And we just kept going. And we wrote the Nunes memo, and we wanted to educate Americans with not our words, but with what the FBI said. What was in the FBI's documentation? What was in the DOJ's documentation? And it got to be so voluminous, we just created DurhamWatch.com. It's a totally free website where every single pleading and document and paper and transcript of the 60 interrogations that I did under oath of witnesses like Sussman and company are there for everyone to read, because that's the whole point. You guys read it on your own. Go read the Nunes memo. See if it's withstood the test of time. And the one thing I told Devin was, whatever we find out, we got to put it out to the American people. And without folks like you and John Solomon just cranking in the face of just unmerciless, fake news, deluge, personal attacks, you guys weathered the storm when really nobody else would. And it made a difference. People say, "Oh, it didn't make a difference." I was like, no. 50% of America figured it out back then because they were great reporting. And now, thanks, I believe, and I hope, to John Durham, at least 20 or 30% more will too, because you're on it again. So it's just been a tremendous journey. And then I served in the Trump administration, which was probably some of the best jobs I ever had.
I know. And I think it's so important, Kash, that people hear it from you. The American people were so disillusioned and have been so disillusioned with the media. And I saw what was going on, even to Devin when he was the chairman, how the left was utilizing and weaponizing with the media because they have sources and friends who are journalists. And now I think a lot of that's come out. We've seen those emails, right? Those exchange of emails and Fusion GPS working in operation. You're a terrorism expert. You're a lawyer that has worked diligently to protect this nation against foreign threats. The tactics that they were using and during this investigation into President Trump, this fake, false investigation, were literally tactics that you would use against an enemy state, right?
No, you're absolutely right. Russia and China couldn't have come up with a disinformation psychological operation that they ran, the Hillary Clinton campaign ran into the United States of America in our presidential election cycle. They couldn't even dream of it. Putin's been laughing for 5 years because he's been trying to do this to America, and we're luckily able to stop him. But he said, I don't need to do it. Hillary's going to do it for me. She's going to spend $50 to $100 million illegally of campaign funds on disinformation operations by hiring fake investigators like Christopher Steele to pump in countless amounts of terribly inaccurate and unverified information into the FISA court. And then they did the same with the tech exec Rodney Jaffe. And the people that are at the center of the whole thing are Michael Sussman, Elias, Fusion GPS, the Clinton campaign, and of course the dirty cops at the FBI with Andy McCabe, Strzok, Bill Priestap, and of course James Comey. And there's so many others, but you're right. You could not architect a better disinformation campaign to unlawfully execute your mission than the Clinton cabal did. And I was a terrorism prosecutor, and I'm telling you, terrorists don't work this well, even when they succeed. And they are pure evil. And this is right up there next to them because it happened by Americans who took oaths of office and violated them every step of the way.
You put that very well, Kash. When I think about what happened, and then I'm going to jump right towards the book, and then we're going to compare that to what happened and everything, because I think it's a brilliant book. And I'm loving it now. I'm like, that was brilliant that you actually thought of that, because we used to call, Hillary Skillery the witch. We called her Skillery the witch whenever with the kids during the trial and stuff. So now you just took that whole thing and brought it up to a whole new level. But the whole issue for me was that and this is what I've been told in the intelligence community from people that are sources, when you conduct a disinformation campaign against a foreign leader, a threat, or something of that nature, especially a foreign leader, you literally have to get the authorization of the President of the United States to conduct that type of disinformation campaign against a foreign leader, because it's lethal. It could be lethal, right? So like, if I'm going to put a story out there on, let's just use somebody that isn't around anymore, like Saddam Hussein, and I'm going to say that Saddam Hussein's henchmen, I'm going to leak information that only his henchmen would know. But let's say I figured that out. I figured that out by listening to conversations or collecting information or whatever. And then I leak that story to the media. Now Saddam Hussein thinks, oh shit, one of my henchmen is selling me out. So now Saddam Hussein decides, you know what? I'm going to execute that guy, because that guy is leaking information on me. Literally, people who knew better, John Brennan, James Clapper, Comey, I mean, the whole gang, right? Even if we go to, general counsel and all of the lawyers, everybody who worked the Russia desk, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, they did that to Carter Page, a citizen who they knew was actually assisting the CIA, and nobody else did, only him and God and the agency, and of course the FBI eventually knew, but they did it to President Trump, a duly elected president. I mean, that's almost, I'm sorry, doesn't that verge on sedition or treason? In my mind, who authorized them to do that? Hillary Clinton, right? Or someone.
No, you're absolutely right. And the oath of office every officer takes in the military or at the Justice Department or law enforcement is to the Constitution and and to uphold the laws. And all those people you just listed broke them. They shattered it. They lied to a federal court. They withheld due process to individuals like Carter Page by hiding evidence of innocence that they knew existed because they collected it, and they intentionally removed that from the applications for the warrants to go up on the Trump campaign. And we exposed all that in the Russiagate investigation, and it led to the reversal of those FISA warrants. Basically, the DOJ for the first time in history said those warrants were illegal and they never should have been issued. And half of America is still asleep on that. And that's why it's so important to keep talking about it. I know everybody's got a lot invested in John Durham, and I, of course, do as well. As a former federal prosecutor, he's taken our Russiagate investigation and entered it into the judiciary, which is where you get accountability. And the Sussman case, I know a lot hangs on it, but so much, which I think it's going to be a conviction, but whichever way it goes.
I was just going to ask you that. Where do you think Sussman's going to go? And I have another question, and that you can answer on top of that. You believe that John Durham figured out what the insurance policy was. And I think we've all kind of had our own guesses as to that. You actually, I believe, know what that insurance policy was. And if you could answer those two questions, Sussman and the insurance policy, and we can explain that.
So I'll take them in reverse. So the insurance policy, the Lovebirds concocted that meeting in Andy McCabe's office in 2016 to say, oh yeah, we need an insurance policy in case all of our other efforts fail against Donald Trump. Well, there was an actual effectuation of the insurance policy. I mean, think about it. They're hatching this plan, and the deputy director of the FBI's office with the head counterintelligence agents and lawyers saying we're going to take out this candidate for president with false information and hide exculpatory evidence. I know John Durham figured it out. We figured it out, and we were on the verge of declassifying it and sending it out to the public. But here's what happens. There's this crazy rule at DOJ. Since we did our jobs too well and they reversed the FISA applications, they redacted all that information out before it was ever issued publicly. So we're stuck in this weird space that I don't even know if I don't even think it's classified necessarily. It's illegal to put out, but you know who put it out? John Durham can put it out. And I know John Durham, I believe he knows what the insurance policy is because of the way he's prosecuted the Sussman case. And that's why I think it's going to go towards a conviction, because unlike a he said, she said, Sarah, like, you're lying. No, you're lying. The two things that probably damn Mr. Sussman the most are the black and white testimony that I interrogated him in 2017 or so, where I asked him, did you go to the FBI on behalf of a client? And he said, yes, I did. And then Michael Sussman's own text message that from the night before his meeting with the FBI, where he writes himself, I'm coming to you as a good Samaritan. I'm not coming to you on the behest of any client. Well, you either lied to Congress or you lied to the FBI, but they both can't be true. And that's why I think that sort of paper evidence, that documentary sworn evidence under oath is so hard for a jury to run away from. And the thing, I know it's DC and I know juries are tough here, but here's the thing. I've tried 60 criminal trials to verdict in state and federal court as a prosecutor and public defender. The thing that ticks off juries the most in any circumstance is being lied to.
Right.
And
I
if
agree.
You show that they're being lied to, you can have the best defense in the world. And they're going to be like, oh man. Or when I was a public defender and I had success, I was able to show that the cops and the government were lying or withholding information. So it goes both ways. But in this instance, it's the irony of ironies that the Hillary Clinton campaign's lawyer are in court saying, actually it was the FBI that lied.
Yeah. And Robbie Mook, I mean, went right after her. I mean, that was what's so amazing. And I agree with you. Nobody wants to be lied to. I think even everybody who's listening to us right now, there's nothing worse, right, than when you're talking to someone that you trust, because these are institutions that we trust. So it would be even like a spouse or the FBI or, these are all institutions that we expect to uphold certain values. And then they're looking you straight in the face, and then you catch them in a bold-faced lie. It's gotta be like, you just stabbed me in the back. Why would I trust you? I mean, that's a character flaw. That's a huge character flaw, especially if the lie is so egregious, right? Because the lie really...
No, you're totally right. It's the one thing that can cut through politics, even in this swamp of a town in DC. You're never going to have the perfect jury pool. You're always going to have people who are against you politically. And this is a highly politically motivated case. But the evidence from John Durham and his witnesses, and oh, by the way, this was brilliant. I didn't even know this was coming. The thumb drives that Michael Sussman loaded the garbage Alpha Bank information on and hand delivered to the FBI, John Durham introduced into evidence the Staples receipt from Washington, D.C., where Michael Sussman bought those thumb drives, and the billing records that Michael Sussman charged the thumb drives to the Hillary Clinton campaign. I mean, that's the type of stuff you can't run away from. So unless the jury is totally rigged, and it could be, I've been there, I've seen it happen. It's just this type of evidence shows so much overwhelming deceit and corruption. And for the Hillary Clinton campaign to come in and say, well, actually, it's FBI and James Baker and company that are lying. The liars are now lying to save your client from the lie. Like, it's just...
It's like rats on a sinking ship, and they're all eating at each other right now, and everybody's scared. Like even Robbie Mook, who you would think like would never do anything to Hillary. He would be loyal to the end. Now Robbie's like, I ain't going to jail for her. I'm just gonna Guess what? She told me to leak it. It's Hillary's fault. The one thing.
It's the only thing that makes even the most corrupt individuals like Robbie Mook, who I also interrogated under oath, and his transcripts on DurhamWatch.com, that you put him under oath. He knows he's a target of John Durham's investigation, and he knows that he testified before under oath. So what's he going to do? Lie like Michael Sussman did? He's seen the movie play out, and so he's probably on an extended. Actually, this is funny and ironic too. Robbie Mook came in on behalf of the defense in the middle of the government's case. He was a defense witness, which is almost never allowed, but this judge allowed it anyway. Different story. And he goes and out and says Hillary Clinton knew about it, authorized it, and sent us in to leak it to the media. I mean, that man better be on an extended vacation because Clinton cartel world is coming after him.
Oh, yeah. Let me tell you, because it's so crazy, huh? Because when he came in on the defense, you're thinking to yourself, okay, there's something he's going to say that's going to help her, right? Or help them. You don't expect him to sit there and then just the whole case for the defense just folded in. It was like everybody, even the Washington Post, the New York Times, all of them bought and paid for. Yes, some of those writers by Hillary and her friends. They all love each other. They all party together. They all went to the White House Christmas parties and they cheered each other. All of a sudden, they couldn't even do anything. They were like, oh, okay, now we've got to write this story that he just basically lowered the kibosh on Hillary. But do you even think anything will ever happen to Hillary? I don't know. I don't think anything will. I think we have to document it for history, but Americans are mad. They're angry about that. You know, they always write and say, I'm just so disappointed. Bill Barr didn't do anything. Now, poor John Durham, it's years later. But it takes a lot of time sometimes for these things to come out, right?
No, that's the value of these prosecutions. You know, of course, we want justice to be served and a conviction to be obtained. But the value of these prosecutions is this testimony is now out there under oath forever. All the documents that John Durham introduced into evidence, the thumb drives, the testimony, the corruption of the FBI, the lies by the Clinton campaign, and all the other evidence is now out there for the world to see. And putting aside whether there's a conviction or not, that is going to stand forever. And no, I don't think Hillary Clinton will be, indicted, unfortunately, but the report that will ultimately be written by the special counsel, and I hope that's a while away because I think there's more indictments coming. It will show that it went to Hillary Clinton and Comey. And that will be recorded in history for our everybody to read and understand whether or not there was a criminal conviction. I'm as frustrated as you about the lack of criminal convictions, but I also, as a former federal prosecutor, know sometimes cases take 3, 4, 5 years to put together. And John Durham's on what? I think like 2+ years. So I'm hopeful for a conviction. I believe that's the way it's going to go because the facts just don't speak to anything else. And hopefully the jury isn't bought and sold for by the same Clinton crime syndicate that has been running this town for too long.
God, I hope not either, Cash. I mean, that would just be gut-wrenching. There's a lot of things that have happened. I want to segue just quickly because this is why you're here. I love this book. And I want you to talk a little bit about it, what it means. Since we went over, I think people have an idea now, y'all, listening to what Cash was involved in, right? And how, how close he was and was like, I think the most integral part of the investigation into Hillary Clinton and what John Durham, I think, has an amazing roadmap because of you, Cash. But now you wrote this children's book. First, how did you come up with the idea of this for a children's book? Was it just the cast of characters?
I mean, honestly, it wasn't me, Sarah. My publicist, Erica Knight, who's just a genius, was like, we should teach children Russiagate. And I was like, how do you do that? I don't know how to explain a FISA to a child. And, long story short, we took that idea to this brilliant company called Brave Books. It's a children's book company. And they said, you give us the basic story. And I remember my time as chief of staff at DOD or heading up counterterrorism for President Trump or whatever mission set I had for whatever role I was privileged to serve in. The one thing was the same. Your job is to put out the truth. That's it. And I was like, well, why don't we make that the message of the plot against the king? We're not talking about Democrats and Republicans. There's no liberal and conservative stuff in there. It's right over wrong. It's if you serve your country or your kingdom, as we put it in the book, the truth is worth fighting for. And sometimes you have to go a little extra further to find it out rather than just listen to what you're being told or seen. And so we created this medieval time setting where we have Hillary Clinton and Keeper Comey of the Slugs acting together with a shifty knight to try and take down the kingdom. And then you have a duke named Devin and a wizard named Cash who come in on a quest for truth to literally try to tell the kingdom these people are corrupting you because they're screaming into the media megaphones and saying lies. And it turns out what the biggest point of the book is educate your children the value of the process of getting to the truth because they're going to be our future leaders. And if they don't understand that this has happened in America before, it's not a fantasy. This happened. This is happening. They need to understand how to correct it to make sure it never happens again. So The Plot Against the King is a fun book. President Trump was kind enough to launch it on Truth Social for me from his account, which was, I think it was the first book launch on Truth Social. And I hope everybody buys it at theplotagainsttheking.com. I really love bringing it to life, but it's the story that you've been reporting for 5 years. I may have done the work, but without your reporting of it, it wouldn't matter because people would be like, what are you talking about? What is this Russiagate thing?
Right.
but people know because you were out there crushing it on TV, on radio, in your written work. And, America really needs to take a look at all your work in the last 5 years on Russiagate, because you're like one of 3 people that had it right the whole time.
Oh my gosh, Cash, that means so much coming from you. I always say, it's like, but it's the silent warriors. I mean, you were behind the scenes. I was trying to get the information out there, but you were behind the scenes doing this work. And there's so many good people, guys, out there that we'll never know their names. Sometimes we will, sometimes we won't, that are working to save our country. I mean, in the intel community, lawyers, others who are like investigating. I mean, imagine John Durham's not doing that all by himself. He had basically a roadmap that Kash and the House Intelligence Committee laid out in detail, but he has people working for him. And I mean, this is a process that takes a lot. But there's one thing that you did say, Kash, that is like so true. And it rings so true even today with everything. We have been through a lot as a nation, but truth is the greatest disinfectant. It is. And even when you've been misguided and it's hard to come back to the center, you can't really avoid the truth. I always tell people, you may not like Trump. Maybe that's your thing. Maybe you just don't like him. But you can't not like him by believing in lies. You have to not like him because you just don't like him. But you have to look at the facts. And that's what you do as a lawyer, I'm sure. And you're just like, I'm going to lay it all out and I'm going to put the facts out there and let the truth fall where it falls. Right. And that's what you did with this book. I think you're brilliant. I am so excited about this book. I've got the book on order for my newest member of our family. I had my daughter just had a little baby girl, and I'm so excited. Yeah, and my youngest daughter is like, we have kids all over the place. People are like, what? Like we have kids everywhere.
I know.
So we're getting it for all the kids, and they will know the truth about what happened. And anytime they see Hillary, they are very scared. I have to tell.
It's so nice of you to let me talk about it. And I agree with you. But let's put it in schools everywhere. Instead of CRT, we're going to do children's reading time, The Plot Against the King. Just go to fightwithcash.com and you can figure out how to get it. Sarah, you're the best for letting me talk about
anytime,
it.
Cash. I'm putting that up on my website. I'm going to send it out in my newsletter. You are going to be like, you're a rock star. You're a rock star. You deserve all this credit for getting our country educated and for actually, I believe, saving our nation from what could have potentially been something far, far worse. I mean, now these people have to pay the price. They've lost their jobs, a lot of them. They've been exposed for the rats that they are. And now they're all eating each other on that sinking ship. And you know what? I have a little bit of gratification in that because we spent a lot of years watching what they were doing to our country. So thank you very much for being a part of the show. And I hope you come back on.
Thanks.
Because we have so much to discuss.
Yeah,
I can't wait till after.
I'm in. You know me.
I know. I'm gonna be bugging you.
Just text me. I'm in.
Okay, I am. I'm gonna text you. Thanks so much, Cash. Wow, wasn't that great having Cash on? I'm gonna tell you guys that is the most inside scoop you're gonna get for those of you who've been following the Russia investigation, Russiagate. There is nobody in the country that knows more. Well, maybe John Durham right now is in a tie with Cash. That knows more about what happened during the Russiagate than Kash Patel, and his incredible work was the reason why so many of us, got the answers that we were seeking. I mean, it was just constant work. I remember when he hardly slept. By the way, I'm hardly sleeping right now myself because China and Russia are like playing some seriously dangerous games with the West and with the United States. They've conducted joint military operations. I don't know if you've all seen that. Conducting military operations while Biden was in Japan. He wrapped up his trip to the Indo-Pacific, and it was exercises that lasted like 13 hours. Those involved Russian Tu-95s and Chinese Tian H-6 strategic bombers. Look, America's enemies are working together. They don't respect the Biden administration's leadership. Who would? He gave Afghanistan to the Taliban. He made the strongest terrorist organization on planet Earth right there with our weaponry. He is a complete imbecile. And look at what's going on in Ukraine. Russia just walked on in. Those poor Ukrainian people, right? And people all over the world. Look what's happening in China. Look at what we're doing there. Look at what's happening there with the Uyghurs, with the Chinese people jumping out of buildings, people being barricaded into their own apartments, with welding. I mean, welding tools. People are welding people in, during this COVID outbreak. Look at what happened in Beijing, Shanghai, and especially look at what is happening in Taiwan. You know what? If anybody in Taiwan is listening to this, I have friends in Hong Kong that are hopefully listening to this too, and who will, I think, more than likely agree with me. If you are too afraid of China, and I can totally understand that, you're just going to end up throwing your hands up in the air and giving the Chinese Taiwan, that may happen. But if you believe you can fight back, I swear, get ready now. Get ready now. Urban warfare, arm yourselves, arm your military aged folks. Make sure that you can fight back, because China is coming for you. It is coming for you. There is no escape. China has Taiwan in its sights. We don't know what's going to happen there. We don't know how the people are going to react to this. But what we know is that the world's geopolitical map is shifting. It is literally shifting before our eyes. And, we've seen that here in the United States. I believe that what we've been seeing in the US, especially with our own government spying on political parties and the weaponization of our most trusted agencies, just like Kash and I talked about, is a extremely dangerous thing to be witnessing at this point in our history. And the Chinese and the Russians are very adept at watching what happens here in the United States as well. And they know that we are weak now. And because of that weakness, they are going to challenge us and challenge the rest of the world in ways we can't even imagine. Folks, let's continue to say our prayers for the families in Uvalde, Texas, and for those beautiful children and teachers that lost their lives, and for all our law enforcement officials who are there, and especially for the whole community, because there wasn't one person in that community of over 16,000 that wasn't some way connected to someone at that school. It was probably one of the hardest stories I've ever had to cover, probably the hardest story I've ever covered. Anything that happens to a child, to me, is the worst thing that can happen. We need to change. We need to find God again. We need to spend more time with our children. We need to fight for our nation. There are so many things we need to do. I have hope. I have hope. I have to. We have to. What happened that day is unexplainable. Can't explain it. Can't explain it. Why people died, why they lost their lives like that at the hands of this 18-year-old monster gunman. But anyways, I think the only thing we can do is just pray for one another, pray for those children, and pray for everyone, pray for us, right? We live in a beautiful nation, but it won't stay this way if we don't protect it. And that requires each and every one of us to do our job. God bless you, and God bless this great nation.
We know it's hard to keep up with all the news these days, but don't worry, because we're here to talk and laugh about it all. Monkeypox is the newest disease that the media is creating panic with. Pelosi was denied communion from the Archbishop, and we interviewed former Navy SEAL Jack Carr. Hey, it's the Chicks here from the Chicks on the Right podcast. Download and subscribe to our daily podcast to hear us pick apart and pick on the news of the day. Politics to pop culture, nobody's safe, but it's all fun. Subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts.